The 3764, Elvis Presley Boulevard. Hit it, Elvis. You got me.
Welcome to EP Back on Tour. We have a great video in store for you today. We'll be interviewing Dave Hebler, and we'll be talking about his early life, his life with Elvis, and yes, the controversial book. But before we begin the video, we want to share with you some insight about how this video came about. But first, with regards to the book, we're fully aware of the controversy that surrounds it, along with the individuals that were involved. I was alive then, and I remember it very well. Several weeks ago, we received an invitation from Dave Hebler to do an interview at the Memphian Theater during Elvis Week. As with everything we do, we had to give it some thought. We are very aware of how high emotions run when it comes to this book. So for this reason, we did not immediately agree to participate. I struggled with the decision because I, like millions of fans, was very angry when this book was published because I felt like my hero was being attacked. It's also important to point out that for that very reason, I never read the book. Nonetheless, I had many questions like, why would they do this? You probably had the same questions. After much consideration, we decided to have a conversation with Mr. Hebler. I knew that if any of my questions were ever going to be answered, I wanted to hear it from him and not hear it secondhand from someone who wasn't there. So after 47 years, I read the book so that I could be prepared for our conversation. Michael and I place a great deal of emphasis on being professional and being respectful. We have strict criteria for our videos. After they are complete, we ask one simple question: would Elvis be happy with our work? Please understand, it was not our intention to defend Mr. Hebler, nor was it ever our intention to attack him. I gave a tremendous amount of thought on how to approach Mr. Hebler during our conversation. So I asked myself this question: how would Elvis want me to approach it? Knowing full well how compassionate Elvis was, I truly believe he would say, be fair and be respectful. So for ease of viewing, we've broken the video into 6 sections. They are Memories at the Memphian, the book, Dave's early life, his introduction to Elvis, being on tour with Elvis, and Elvis off stage. Please enjoy the video. Mr. Hebler, thank you so much for joining us here today. We can't thank you enough. We really appreciate the
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
The opportunity to speak with you. So we're at one of the places that was your guys' stomping grounds back in the 70s. And
yeah, right here.
Right here at the Memphian Theater. So here we sat on the stage, and they were telling us when we came in, I kind of thought that was the beginning, or that would have been like the front row, but he's telling me the front row was back there.
Yeah.
So they built the stage way out.
Yeah, we're sitting right where Elvis used to sit, where his chair was. Right now, this is where it was.
Wow.
You walk in that door, or walk right to his seat.
We didn't get a chance. I wanted desperately to, but it's so hot outside, but I wanted desperately to have you show us, where you guys would park and how you would come in. But you say it was on this, you would park over on this side of the building?
Yeah, mostly there. Sometimes they came in the front door.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. How many, let me ask you this, what was, so you're at Graceland, was it something that was planned out, or was it more Elvis's style to be spur of the moment? Like, hey guys, let's go to the movies. How did it usually go down?
I think a more spur of the moment than anything, but the thing that I think is so important about the Memphian and Elvis's life is that this really was his sanctuary.
Okay.
He came here with his guys,
right,
without any outside distractions. Nobody jumping and clamoring for autographs or anything like that. So this was his refuge.
So
really.
When you say that, so it was a place where he felt protected, which is good, and he got to do something he enjoyed. My question is, when you got here, there probably weren't fans here waiting because they didn't know you were coming, but when you left, there were probably a lot of fans out there.
Same thing, we just bored on through them.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would, typically you were here in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, we used to come here about midnight, 1 o'clock, something like that.
And Elvis, so tell me a little bit about I know there's rules, right? So when you came to the theater with Elvis, right, he had his seat, right?
Yes.
And what were the rules as far as you didn't sit beside him or?
You didn't sit beside him and you didn't sit in front of him. And you didn't bring no strangers in there either.
Okay. So you couldn't bring a friend if you want. You were.
Yeah, I could bring a friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was your favorite memory? There's probably a lot of them, but what was your favorite memory of coming here with Elvis and the guys?
Oh, it's something I did, actually. It's my favorite memory. I jumped in the limo, I went over to Crystal Burger. I ordered 50 Crystal Burgers, 50 sausage burgers, a whole bunch of fries, bunch of gooey shakes and stuff, packed it all up, paid the bill, and then tipped the 4 waiters $100 apiece.
Wow.
They loved me.
I bet you.
Yeah.
They liked when it was movie night.
They liked me right then. Yeah, right then and there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so we talked about the rules, and then just briefly a little bit about how many guys that when you guys would come over. Would it be a group of 10, 12, 20? How many usually?
It varied, actually. Okay. I don't know if I could quantify that. You know, it all depended. Like, for instance, I lived in California.
Okay.
So when we were not on tour, I would go home, you know, for a couple of weeks or whatever. So I wasn't here, you know, half the time.
Okay.
And same with the other guys. You know, 2 guys would basically be on duty and the other 2 guys would be home.
Right. Okay. Mr. Hebler, I want to thank you for inviting us to interview you. That was very kind of you to ask us to come in and speak with you. As I'm sure you know, anytime you talk to anybody, they want to know about the book. They want to talk about the book. You have so graciously offered to explain your point of view. And I want to say before we start that, I want to say that we're not here to defend you because you're a grown man. You can defend yourself. You're a 10th degree black belt, right? So you know how to defend yourself. Our job was to, Michael and I do a lot of interviews. We do a lot of Elvis related stuff. And our job is to give people a platform to say what they want to say, to basically share their thoughts about it. And I thought that, you know, Michael and I are very fair people, and we think that everybody should have a chance to speak their part and to say what they feel that they need to say. So I was so glad that when we got this interview that that's what we're going to be able to do, is give you the opportunity to answer some questions. And what I really liked about it is in the pre-interview, you said no questions were off the table, and I appreciate that because
no questions.
You've been very kind with this. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about, you know, your perspective about the book from working for Elvis, have been Elvis's friend. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of fans give you their point of view about the book. What I will say about where I stood with the book is a couple of things. One, and we discussed this in a pre-interview where I said that as with a lot of fans, it hurt me as a fan, because I was young at the time, and the fact is I never read the book. Okay, I read it for this interview because I wanted to do my research. I didn't want to come in here blind and be I'm never going to be accusatory of you because I don't think that's not my position. I wanted to come in here knowing what was in the book to be able to discuss the book with you. I think a lot of times comments are made about things where people don't do their research, but they're willing to make the comment. So we did it a little bit differently. I did my research, and then we're going to discuss the book. I'm sure you know about this. I was one of the millions of fans. I don't know if there were millions of fans that did this, but I was one of the fans that actually went to the local bookstore and would glue the page. You've heard that story where it glued the pages together so that people couldn't read it. Because, again, you have to understand from the fan standpoint, and this is a point that I would like to make, is that when I heard bad things about Elvis that I hadn't heard before, whether it came from the book or whether it came from anybody, it's a hurtful thing because that's your hero. And you look at it from my standpoint, I was a young kid at the time when he died, and it was hurtful from the standpoint of, I've used this analogy with Michael when we discussed this, is that when you hear something hurtful, it's almost like somebody is telling you, you know, Superman can't fly. Superman, you know, he's not as good as you think. And I think that's what hit hard for me. That's what hurt me, is that the guy was a hero to me. He helped me in so many ways in my life because I was raised alone by my mom. And I learned a lot of things from him. I learned how to treat people. I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to be fair, because I just learned a lot of things from Elvis. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware. And I think that, I don't like to speak for people, but I think I kind of do in this situation. I think I speak for a lot of fans, where I think that they were just hurt by the book. So with that being cleared up, I like to ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
So to start this off, let's set the stage for how the book came about. So it's July 5th. You guys, 1976, you guys are wrapping up a tour right here at the Mid-South Coliseum, which would, unbeknownst to you probably, would be your final show with Elvis. Because after that, it was July 13th when you were called to Graceland. Did you have any idea what was coming, or did you just receive the call and you were told to report to Graceland?
You know, as far as the firing is concerned?
Yes, sir.
No, really. We didn't have any clue that was happening.
Okay. So you guys were on tour. You finished up here in Memphis on July 5th, and then you were off, and you said you were at the hotel, correct?
Yeah, I was at the hotel here.
And you got a call to report to Graceland. So can you just share a little bit about, so you didn't know why you were going there, and you got there, and can you just share with us about that?
No, actually, I didn't get a call. I went to Graceland.
Went. Okay.
And I was sitting in the kitchen table, you know, the bar, they're having a cup of coffee. And Vernon came over the intercom, and he said, hey, Dave, come on over here. I need to talk to you in the office. I said, okay. So I went over there, and he said, you know, we've been, basically, he said, we're having all kinds of financial difficulty, and we're going to have to cut down on expenses and let a few people go, and unfortunately, you're one of them.
How did that strike you right at that point? I mean,
BS.
Okay. Now, when you say BS, give me a little bit of texture to that. What made you think that was?
That was just crap. Are you kidding? We knew better than that.
Right.
Oh, I knew better than that.
Okay.
And but the details of the firing, which is really got us going. I mean, 2 days' notice, 1 week's pay, and we're out in the street with no way to provide for our family.
Right.
How would you feel?
I agree.
All right. I felt a number of things, not the least of it was I was totally pissed off, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay.
And the man took off in the dead of night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had his father do the evil deed for him. Did I leave town in the dead of night and have my father fire him, put him out in the street? No way to feed for his family? No, I didn't do that. He did that to me. What did I do to get fired?
Right.
Did he ever think he was my employer? Shouldn't he, if he had an issue with me, I said, have a little sit down with me and say, Dave, you know, whatever. Isn't that what an employer and an employee do? But he ran away, is what he did, and let somebody else handle that. And that was the point, my point. You hired me to my face. Fire me to my face. That's it.
So tell me a little bit about the story. At that point, based on what you just said there, you went to where he was, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I called my wife, told her what happened, and she was understandably upset. when I say I called my wife, I called my wife and my family, which included her little sister, her daughter, and my 2 daughters, all of whom were teenagers, and me. And that was the family. Well, in any event, she said, you go track them down. Okay? So the next morning, I was in Las Vegas at the MGM Hotel, and I borrowed a car from security and let me have. Drove over to the gated community where Dr. Gannon's house was. Blew on through the security at the gate. Got to the house and went into the house, and I had a gun on, you know, and I was licensed to carry, actually. And walked in, and the guys there, all of a sudden, you know, had half a heart attack. And I explained to them, I'm not here to do anybody any harm. Okay, I'm not going to hurt nobody. I'm here because the man hired me to my face, and he needs to fire me to my face. That's what I want him to do. And he was upstairs asleep. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and finally Gannon came home. And he almost had a heart attack, you know, when he saw me, and I told him the same story. And he said, well, you know, I'll tell him, you know, whatever, but he's not going to sue you, you know, whatever. And I said, fine, I made my point, and that's basically it. Basically, Elvis was upstairs on the Dr. Gannon famous diet plan. And remind me later to tell you about that diet plan, okay? And you get an idea what Dr. Gannon was all like. So anyhow, I left the house, drove back over to the MGM, you know, gave him back their car, got on a plane, went home. That was it.
Fast forward a little bit. So you're fired July 13th of '76. How fast after that firing in July did the idea for the book come about?
We actually, it took a little while, and I'm not sure how long it was, but we talked about it, and you know, and the reason for the firing was because we interfered with, you know, the people who were bringing in the drugs, you know, right? And they went whining and crying to Elvis, you know, about how we bullied them and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we did, you know, and we failed. Didn't work. So then we decided that we would try one more time and go public. The thinking being, our thinking being, is that if we went public, he wouldn't be able to ignore it. And maybe, just maybe, he would realize what he was doing, not only to himself, but everybody around him, and seek out the kind of professional help that he actually needed to have. We failed. Because Elvis didn't think, he didn't believe that he had a problem that he couldn't control. But nobody can control drugs.
Right. 2 questions I wanted to ask you is, did Red and Sonny, did they approach you to bring you into the group, or were you all 3 together on this idea right from the start? How did that work out?
No, we were together right from the start because we were fired. We were the 3 that were fired.
Right. So then that leads me to the next question is that, so would you agree that initially, maybe not in the middle and maybe not in the end, would you agree that initially this was anger, that it was, you know, let's make him pay for this? Was there any of that?
No,
because I think fans,
no, we never, no. We didn't want him to pay for anything. We were angry, of course,
right.
Certainly, but we wouldn't want to hurt him.
And I think that's where that's where a lot of the fans thought that was the purpose of the.
It is not the purpose.
Right. Right.
You know, Go ahead. Get you there.
Well, the next question I want to ask you is, was there ever any thought given to a more positive approach? Like, in other words, not bring, and we'll get into, you had said some things had been added to what you guys had said, and I want to talk to you about that in just a minute, but was there ever any thought of, why don't we put Elvis's best side, you know, put in the book that we love the guy, we respect the guy, and we want to give you all the good stuff, that we want to give you all the good stories.
We did, sir. We didn't write that damn book. Again, let me say that again. We did not write that book.
Yeah,
Steve, let me finish. Right. Steve Dunleavy and the publishers who he worked for wrote that book, and they wrote it from the perspective of creating a book that was going to be so sensational it would sell billions of copies. And in that context, they were correct. However, what really happened is that Red and Sonny and I sat in a hotel room in Hollywood, California for 30 days and told stories. 95% of those stories were good stories. They were fun stories about the good times that we had, the jokes we played out on others, the crazy things that fans did. That was 95% of it. And when we saw the final product, when it was finally, the final document, was when it was already published. And that's the first time we read it, and none of what we said was in there. None of it. It was all this negative stuff. So now we have to deal, you know, with a world of hurt falling on our heads. How would you like to receive 40,000 hate letters?
I wouldn't.
I didn't like it either.
Right, I wouldn't, but here's a question I want to ask you. What, and my goal was to not...
Wait a minute. First off, let me apologize for being emotional.
Right. No, that's fine. That's what, we're having a conversation. So,
okay.
What I wanted to do is I wanted to give, and my goal was not to upset you. My goal is I'm trying to ask questions you're telling me from the side of the guys that wrote the book.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you from the side of the fans, what the fans were trying to figure out.
Oh, I know full well what the fans meant.
Well, not all.
They let me know every day in every way.
Right, but understand this, Mr. Hebler, not all, because there are a lot of, I'm one of those people. Michael is one of those people. We're trying to come and hear your story because I want to hear and I want to understand. Now, I can't control when people come on there, the hate mail. I don't understand that. Michael and I have had hours of conversations about this. I don't understand this. Number one, it's 50 years. We're going on almost 50 years.
Yeah.
I
still get them. I got hate mail a couple of days ago.
I don't understand. I don't understand that. And the thing that I'm hoping that I can get you to understand from a fan side is that where you say, you know, forgiveness for what? And I understand that. And you don't look at it as that you did anything wrong. The fans, again, we go back to what I said at the very beginning. A fan looks at it as like you're talking bad about my hero, and I think that's what upsets.
I understand that full well.
Right.
Nobody likes to hear negative things about somebody they care for. Nobody likes to do that.
Exactly. The other thing that I want to make sure that we touch on, and I was given a lot of thought about this before the interview even started. I wasn't there. You know, you were there. You saw all this stuff play out. I think that a question that I would ask for anybody that wants to be condemning of your story, of Sonny's story, of Red's story, is that they weren't there and they don't have all they don't have all the information. They don't have all the facts, and so. I think that's where I try to be more fair, where I say, how can I condemn? There's no way that I can condemn you. I won't, because I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'll take it a little bit further.
Right.
You weren't there.
Exactly.
And if you weren't there, then everything you think you know is secondhand information.
That's exactly
It's hearsay.
Right.
Now, some of what you think you know is true.
Right.
Some of what you think you know is kind of true.
Right.
And some of what you think you know is not true.
Right.
That's the actual facts of the matter. Why would you choose to hate on somebody on the basis of secondhand information?
Right.
Why would you choose to do that?
Right. No, I don't do that.
But millions did.
Right. I understand.
And you just finished telling me, oh, millions did. I already know that
Right.
first place. You know, I'm the one receiving them all.
So let me ask you this question. Was any consideration when you guys were talking, when you three of you were together and you're going, hey, let's go public with this, did you give any consideration to the backlash that you probably knew was coming your way, right? If we go public with this book, they're going to let us have it. I mean,
We knew if we went public, it was going to, you know,
right.
it's really going to go crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I did, research on the whole, the whole story about Steve Dunleavy because I wanted to have a little bit more research than just walking in here and asking you questions about a book. But he was a scoop reporter, and I'm making this point on this video because I want the younger fans to understand. You remember back in the day when you had the Star and you had the Enquirer, when you checked out at the supermarket, and there were stories in those magazines about aliens abducted the president and all this, and that was the guy. He was a scoop reporter, and when the Star, I don't know if you knew this, but when the Star became, when it became a paper, well, a smut magazine is what I call it, when it came out, it was brought out to be in competition with the National Enquirer. Did you know that?
Yes.
And so when they started off in 1976, this was one of their first big stories.
Yeah.
So they put their best guy, Steve Dunleavy, on there because scoop reporter. And so that leads me back to your point about stuff was added. And so there's the reason why. So I have no reason to believe that your stories weren't great stories because in reading the book, I didn't read a ton of things in that book.
No, I'll give you a perfect
really
example. And I'll tell this to everybody. Pick up that book, read the front cover.
Right.
Read the back cover. It's all pretty sensational, and it's all fairly nasty, and it's lurid and sensationalist to beat the band.
Okay.
Right? We never said those words. Those were not our words.
Right.
We didn't say those words.
Right.
And they did the same thing to the content in the book.
Maddie, can you give me the book that's in my bag?
Yeah, there it is.
Yep, there it is. This has been your worst night. This has been your worst nightmare. Let me ask you about this. If we could go back to 1976 now, and you're sitting there with the three guys, knowing what you know now, what would you say? Would you want to do it again?
Yeah, but we would get more education on publishing. Right. Yeah, well, I think we'd have looked a little bit more.
I have to agree with you on that because I do believe that that was probably the biggest obstacle with this is that you guys, if your intentions was to do
ignorant.
what you wanted.
We didn't know. What do we know about publishing?
Exactly.
You know?
So,
but I'll put you in my shoes.
okay.
All right, you're in my shoes. I'm going to take you back to 1976.
Okay.
Okay? And somebody you love, somebody you care for, has got a drug problem, a huge drug problem, a problem that you believe is going to kill him. Wouldn't you do everything in your power to help that person?
Absolutely.
You bet you would.
Absolutely.
And that's what we did.
Right.
We stood up and we tried our best. And we got fired. We failed.
Right.
We got fired. Nobody else stood up. Nobody.
Right.
And you hear them now, today, those who are there, saying, oh yeah, well, you know, we tried to help. Yeah, really? What did you do? The answer is nothing. You did nothing. We did. We knew we were going to get injured, but we stood up anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't make me some kind of angel or anything like that. I don't, to make me any better than anybody else, nothing. But that's the facts of the matter, and that's how we acted in the day.
Okay.
We were trying to save someone that we loved who was killing himself with drugs.
Okay.
I mean, everybody knew he had a drug problem. Everybody, the dog knew he had a drug problem.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody helped.
Do you think it hurts that, I was giving some thought to this for the last couple weeks. If you look at this book, if you read this book and you look at it through a 1976 lens, when times were much different, and you read this book now in 2024, some of this stuff in this book, it's almost like a joke, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The stories that you would read, like if you take the worst story that I read in this book, and I go, if that happened today, it wouldn't even be newsworthy.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't even be a big
Right.
deal. Yeah.
But rewind back to 76, right?
That's right.
Totally different, because much more conservative-minded folks out there,
Yeah.
where everything, any little sidetrack that was taken, you were called out on it. I don't think the same thing's happening today.
Mm-hmm.
If you write a book like this, I don't think the same thing would happen today.
So anyhow, the conclusion of what I wanted to say about, choosing to hate on somebody on secondhand information, what does that say about you?
Right, exactly. I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely my goal in this, and Michael can speak for himself on how he feels about it, but my goal on this was to, like I say, sit down and talk with you, because I think if you want to know something, you have to talk to the person that did whatever it is that you want to talk to them about, right? So I thought, and so in doing that, there was never any intention to upset you or to make you angry. I just have to ask hard questions that, to be honest with you, I don't like asking, because they're questions that, if we're ever going to clear any of this up to any degree, these are questions that people want to know. But the thing of it is, I think that you already know in your mind that there are still going to be those people out there that aren't going to believe it. They're still going to be nasty. They're still going to write hateful letters, and there's nothing we can do about that.
I know.
Let me put my glasses. I can't read without my glasses. Why are you laughing? You have glasses on. All right. I should have done this to begin with, but I was trying to act young, and I'm not. So, all right. Let me just read this, because this is Steve Dunleavy. It says, Steve Dunleavy has woven together the experiences of 3 Presley bodyguards who were there partying with him, womanizing with him, worrying with him, tasting the pleasures and the pains of the life with the most fabulous star in showbiz history. So if you read that, you can see what that is. That's somebody, you pick up the back of the book, oh, well, that's enticing. I'd like to read that. But then I wanted to ask you this question, and see, because I think this is a question that would help a lot of people understand what your thoughts were on this. And it's on page 323, and I wrote, it's actually an epilogue of this book. Definitely need the glasses this time. It says here, about halfway down the book, it says, Dave Hebler, when he got over the shock of being fired, said he was relieved. At last I could get on with my own life and not have it tied to the whims and the moods of another human. So my question is this, and I think a lot of fans, if they were sitting in my shoes right now, they'd ask you this, and this is not to make you angry. I just wanted to ask you this question. This is really a question, probably one of my favorite questions that I got to ask today. If that's the case, you said, I'm glad it's finally over. Why didn't you leave before? So you came on with Elvis in 74 full time, right? In 74 to be a bodyguard.
72 part-time and 74 full-time.
So 74 is rolling along and some things aren't making you happy. 75, why didn't you leave? Because you wrote in there, or somebody wrote for you. I wanted to know if that was your feeling. I'm glad it's over.
Not really. It was. I didn't think of those terms. I wasn't suffering. You know, I was dealing with the situation.
Okay.
You know, whatever. I didn't. I wasn't berserk. Had I been thinking like that, I'd have quit.
Right. So I think the other thing that people get upset about, and we're going to wind this up on the book here in just a minute, but I just have a few more questions, and then we're going to talk about happy stuff. One of the questions that I have is that you guys had a pretty good life with Elvis. In other words, you're flying. It's not like you're on tour buses. You're flying. You're going all over the place, and lots of pretty girls running around. And if you drank, I guess you had alcohol at the ready. Anything you did, I guess food. There was tons of food. You stayed in the best of hotels most of the time. I think that would be a question that people would ask. If you had all that, what was so bad about it, other than what we'd already discussed with the drug situation?
Nothing,
but what was
nothing was so bad
nothing
about
so
it.
bad? Okay, all right.
That was all fine and well and good. From my point of view, the best thing is I got to play on golf courses who would never even let me see their gates.
That's a pretty good deal right there. I wanted to ask you, what were your feelings about, because this question has been asked to me by people that friends of mine, where they kind of want to, and some fans have asked me this question. Do you think that there's a difference between where you stood in this story than Red and Sonny? Because if you think about it, Red was with him from high school on.
Yes, there was a difference.
And then there's Sonny, who just a little bit lesser time than that, but not a lot. But then you come in way late in the game. And I think a lot of people wonder, why did you feel the need to get involved? I guess what I'm saying is most people might look at you and say, why didn't you let the guys that knew him the best deal with that, and then you not deal with that?
Because all three of us were fired.
Okay.
So all three of us decided to join together and go public.
Okay. So what would be your answer when people say this was purely done for money? What would be your answer? And again, I want to make sure that you understand. I'm not trying to.
No, I understand.
I just want to I want to ask this question. What would you say to the fans when they say this was done purely for money, because you had been fired? All you wanted was a book deal to
purely
get
for money.
Right.
Huh? I get that a lot, by the way.
So
yeah, making money off of Elvis. Oh wait, isn't that what EPE does? Of course it is.
Okay.
And they do it every day, all day, in every way possible, all the time. And they make millions of dollars. I don't do that at all. I market my stories of my experiences, including the 4.5 years that I was involved with Elvis Presley. And I have every right to market my story. And all of my stories are that way. I sell pictures of me, and Elvis is in the picture.
Right.
I don't sell pictures of Elvis. I market my story. That's what I do, and that's what I'm doing.
Understood. So, if you could put a dollar amount, what was?
Oh yeah, I forgot to do that.
What did you make
money
off the book?
Money, all the millions of dollars you made off this book, you monster. Here's the truth. I made 1.6 cents per book, sir.
Wow.
That's the truth. And then for the last 10 years that the book was in print, we never received a single penny. Nothing. They screwed us from the beginning to the end in every way possible. Lied to us like it was going out of style, and we believed him because we were naive and we were foolish, and I guess we didn't know how to verify that or do anything different.
Right.
We chose to believe him, and that's the fruit of us being ignorant.
Well, you're going to make a little more off the book because I'm going to give you $5 when we leave because
Oh, yeah.
because for the ones that I glued together.
No, I have another book, one I wrote. You can buy that. You can buy that book.
So, Mr. Hebler, I wanted to ask you, so the book was put out on August 1st. We all know what happens on August 16th. Do you feel that the Achilles heel in this whole thing was the Achilles heel in this was that Elvis died 2 weeks after you put the book out? Do you think that's what did the most damage? Because I was wondering, from your point of view, if Elvis hadn't died and this book hit the bookshelf, do you think it would have been, it would have just been another book?
It would have been totally different.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that the emotions that people went through when Elvis died, I mean, my emotions were the same way when I heard that he died. I mean, I was driving home on the freeway with my wife's birthday present because it was her birthday. And I heard on the radio, on the car, Elvis Presley died. I went, what? I'm talking to the stupid radio. And he repeated it. I'm sorry to tell you, but Elvis Presley has passed away. He's died. And I couldn't, all of a sudden, I couldn't see. I'm out of tears streaming down. I had to pull off the freeway. So I pulled off the freeway, and I was just sitting there. I don't know, whatever. And a highway patrolman pulls up behind me. Comes over, and he says, sees me crying. He says, sir, are you in trouble? Can I help you? Is there a problem? And I said, yeah, Elvis Presley died. And I used to work for him. And he went, he says, stay here as long as you want. Whenever you're ready, go on home. By the time I got home, the phone was ringing off the hook. And I don't know how they were doing that because the phone was in my wife's maiden name, but they all knew it. And then Sonny called me up and said, I want to do a press interview tomorrow at our attorney's office up in Beverly Hills. He said, I want you to come too. And I did, so I joined him and that was the infamous, press conference that we had where there were like 50 reporters and they were hostile. I mean, they were just nasty. They thought we were two disgruntled ex-bodyguards with knuckles dragging on the ground, looking to make a few bucks. And they were there to hang us, by the neck. In fact, the last question somebody asked was that in a sneering manner. Oh yeah, well, you loved the guy and your job was to protect him. Why didn't you protect him? And I said,
how do you protect a man from himself?
And that quote made me famous, actually. It was anything, but that was the absolute truth. The whole thing. And I stand by those words, today. So that was the genesis of the thing, and the fact that Elvis died, 2 weeks later. Now people are really in a tailspin. I mean, they are despondent, horribly despondent. Their heroes died.
Right.
And that book on top of it?
Right.
Well, they got to take it on somebody. You might as well take it on us. Or whatever,
I understand. Looking back now, do you think the book was a mistake?
I don't know. Give me an alternative.
Not writing it?
Hmm?
Not writing it?
And do what? Nothing?
Well, I guess if you're fired and you're angry, I guess you asked me to give you an alternative. If you're fired and you just move on with, you just move on with your life and just forget about it.
It was fairly easy for me.
If you're that angry, and in other words, because I'm the type of person, if, and I'm not saying in that situation, but say I'm fired, if I work as whatever my occupation is, I get fired from that job, I'm the type of person that I would get that mad and I would just walk away and that would be it. I wouldn't have anything, I'm done. If that's the way you felt about me, then we're done and I move along. So that's the alternative.
Well, that's how I felt.
Right.
But Red and Sonny were a different matter.
Right.
Red been with him since high school.
Right.
Sonny, 16 years. All of a sudden, they don't know how to do their job.
Right.
What's the deal? To be fired in the manner in which they were fired, a total insult. You don't treat a man like that. You don't. Me, to a lesser extent, only because of the amount of time involved. And I had options afterwards that I could fall back on my martial arts world and do that kind of thing. I could recover. Red and Sonny, what are they going to do? Right. So I was part of the slurry. The three of us were fired. The three of us did the book, and that was that. But our individual situations were different. That's all. I don't know whether it's better, good, bad, or indifferent, but it's different.
Earlier, and there's probably two more questions and we're done, because
Sure.
This has been tough, and I know it's been tough for you, and I know you don't like talking about it. So
I'm fine talking about it. And I apologize because I'm emotional about that book.
You don't need to. We're both grown men, and I can accept that, because I might be exactly in your same shoes, but I'm not. You were about 35, I guess, when that book, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yes.
Give me the difference, and then we're going to wrap this part up, because I want to move on to the stuff that I like, talking about the touring years and being on the road. Give me your impression of looking at it through the lens, looking at this book through the lens of a 35-year-old man compared to looking at it through the lens of an 86-year-old man.
Well, the emotions aren't anywhere near as as strong as they were then. I was outraged. I'm not used to being dismissed like I'm some pile of dog manure. That's insulting as hell. It's personally revolting. It is. If I got an issue with you, I'm going to come in your face with the issue. And hopefully we can have a civil conversation about that issue and resolve it. But if you start the conversation out by calling me all manners of nasty, I doubt that my reaction is going to be one of charity and what have you. I'm not going to at all. I don't get in your face, don't get in mine.
Exactly.
I don't do that kind of thing to people.
Well, we're done with this part, and I really appreciate, we got some other stuff I want to talk to you about, your growing up and things like that. I want to get to know you a little bit better. The one thing that I do want to stress here is that I appreciate the fact that you did exactly what you told me you were going to do. You said that you would answer all my questions. You did that, and I appreciate it. Again, I'll go back to the point that I've made numerous times during this conversation. I appreciate everything that we discussed.
Yeah, I appreciate it too.
And your point of view. I really do. And I just want to make clear to the fans because I think a lot of times when somebody steps up and says, we're going to interview somebody, you know, they look at the interviewer, the person that's doing the interview, and say, well, you're siding with this person, you're not. I think you'll agree from a fan standpoint that I've heard everything that you've said, I've appreciated everything that you've said, but I still maintain my thoughts on everything.
Of course.
And so let's go back to your childhood,
Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Okay, I was, along with my 4 brothers and my mother and father, I was raised in a 4.5-room apartment in a tenement building that had been built in the 1800s and condemned in the 1800s. We didn't have a car. We didn't have a TV. We didn't have a phone. We didn't have hot water. We had 1 bathroom and 1 sink in the kitchen. My poor mother. And we certainly didn't have any money. But we did have rats and cockroaches. And I want to promise you, you ain't never lived till you had a rat run across your face when you're trying to sleep. But I learned at an early age that if I wanted something and that something cost money, then I was going to have to figure out how to get a job or how to work, somehow earn that money to get that thing that I wanted, you know, right? So I took a job as a caddy at our local country club, which was about 3.5 miles from my house, all uphill. Of course, it's downhill the other way, but uphill. So I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would walk up the street to the corner store, like a 7-Eleven, but it was not a 7-Eleven, it was a little corner store. Mm-hmm. And sitting on their steps would be their daily delivery of fresh bread. So I would steal I would steal a loaf of Italian bread, and I would eat half of it on my walk up to the hill because that was my breakfast. I didn't have any breakfast. And the pro shop at the golf course had this enclosure out, a fence type enclosure. And that's where they stored all of their liquor and their, sodas and whatever out there. And there was a little hole on the side big enough for me to wiggle on through, which I did, and I would steal 2 bottles of beer, and I would sniggle, come back out again with my 2 bottles of beer and my bottle opener and my half loaf of bread, and I'd go hide it in my hiding spot. Then I would go over and wait for the pro shop to open and see if I get a job as a caddy, often carrying bags heavier than me, for 18 holes, and I received the kingly sum of $1.35 for that effort. Then I would hang around some more, see if anybody else wanted to hire me. And if not, then I would trudge on home. I was 8 years old.
You're supposed to say uphill both ways.
Yeah, I know.
There's no downhill. You walk.
Coming down was just as bad as coming up, darn near, it seemed like.
You got to walk uphill to get to work, and then you got to walk uphill to get home.
Yeah,
so
uphill to get back.
That makes it more painful.
So, I'm not whining. There are plenty of people in my position, but that was the genesis of my early days. Plus, everybody knows me as a martial artist and Elvis Presley's bodyguard.
Right.
But that wasn't my education. My education and training was in mathematics and physics and science. My high school course was a special course called technical. It was taught by engineers from the General Electric Company in my hometown. They were huge. They had the biggest sound lab in the world and the most advanced sound lab in the world and the biggest electrical lab in the world and the biggest, you know, I mean, you know that Frankenstein, you know, thing, that's where it was produced.
Wow.
The reason why they did it was they built transformers. Transformers went on telephone poles, and they get hit by lightning a lot, and they failed. So they would take a transformer, put it in a pit, turn on the sound, hit it with a lightning bolt, and then listen to the transformer so they could figure out what went wrong, you know, so they could fix it. Wow. And that was basically what it was. I mean, they took me over there one time and shot me with 30,000 bolts and lit up a fluorescent light bulb that was in my mouth. You know,
So that's what happened, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's what happened to me. So, you know, so that was my background. And then they had a program for employees of, for the family of employees of General Electric Company. And my dad worked for the General Electric Company. An amazing program. It basically, you went to college for a week, and then you worked for a week. And you got paid each week. At the end of 4 years, you had a bachelor's degree, and you were a journeyman machinist. Big time money, you know, back in those times. Right. I passed the test, I was accepted, and 2 weeks later, they turned me down because I was blind in this eye.
Tell me about that.
I had a shot out when I was 13. We all had BB guns, and we had a little war up in the woods, and I lost, basically. And that was probably the single most significant negative thing that has ever happened in my life, and it plagues me to this day, because I don't have any depth perception. Which is interesting, because I also don't have any, I have neuropathy, and I can't feel the bottom of my right foot, which is why I stumble all over the place. I can't feel my foot going down, nor can I see it. But I can guess depth about as good as you can see it, you know, usually. But, you know, I said, you know, I'll wear safety glasses, you know, we'll do it. But my dad was one of those passive kind of guys. He didn't want to create any waves or anything like that, you know, so. To get even, I joined the Air Force.
What year would that have been?
1955.
Wow. So the guy that would later become your boss, he's already on the move, right? He's a year into his profession.
Yeah. So, you know, we had empathy, Elvis and I, you know, on that path. He was a poor boy, and so was I.
Yeah.
Of course, he made it a little bigger than I did. Let me put it that way. Because he had talent, I didn't.
Right. So you joined the Air Force 4 years? You did 4 years?
4 years.
And where did you go with that?
Well, I was a senior intelligence operations specialist.
Wow.
I was a spy. Basically, what I did is I made charts for B-52 and B-57 bombers. When they pass a fail-safe and as atomic war is on, they pull out their orders, and one of them is a map to their target. I provided those maps. And I assure you, a B-47 bomber cannot go from March Air Force Base in California to Moscow and get back.
Wow.
That was a death sentence right there.
Right.
But once you pass fail-safe, you had to assume all of your loved ones are dead already in the war. I mean, it was, in those days, that was really...
We got close, right?
Yeah, that was scary, really scary.
And being in your position, you knew a lot more than the general public.
Yeah, I did. And my clearance was higher than top secret.
Wow.
My clearance was crypto. which is a step higher.
Wow.
Boy, they investigated me like I was going out of style. Yeah, they really did. But the good part about it is that nobody could interfere with my job, including the base commander. Nobody could come into that building where I worked.
Wow.
Usually alone. One other guy worked there.
So take me to the place where you're still working and you're doing your martial arts on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And then we fast forward to about the fall of '72, I think you said in the book, where you met first time you met Elvis when he came to Ed Parker's place, right?
Yeah, but by then I'd already been training since 1959.
Okay.
I was training with some, in 1958, I was training with some Hawaiian guys in my squadron. And they were doing something that they called Kempo. I later learned they didn't know very much, but nevertheless, they knew I was going to enroll in college at Pasadena City College the following year. And I had to enroll by June 1 so I could get an early out of the Air Force, 2 months out, so I could be available for classes in September. So they said, well, look, after you do the school thing, drive up the street 2 blocks. And this guy, Ed Parker, has a karate school there. He says, then when it comes to Kempo, he's the man. He's the guy. So I did exactly that. I enrolled in school, drove up and did this school, and I went over there, and Ed Parker was there. He's the only guy there. I told him my story, and we chatted back and forth, and he took me out on the mats and showed me a little bit of his version of Kempo, and I was astounded.
He was that good?
Yeah, I had never seen a human being that could move like that.
Wow.
And I instantly wanted to move like that. So I signed up for lessons right then and there, and for 2 months, I would drive one way 60 miles, to take classes. And that was the start of it, and it never stopped.
Where was his studio was where? What?
On Walnut Street in Pasadena.
Pasadena, and you were in Glendora, right?
No, I was in March Air Force Base,
okay,
outside of Riverside.
Oh, so you're still in?
I was still in service.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was interesting time.
Well, you were right. When you said earlier, you said you're not going to believe my story. That's a pretty good story. So the first meeting with the guy who would later become your boss and your friend, it shows up on page 34 in the book, where it says that you were at Ed Parker's studio and in walks Elvis.
Yeah.
And that's the fall of '72.
A black belt friend of mine informing me that they were having a workout this coming Friday, a bunch of black belts, at Ed Parker's Santa Monica school. And my school at the time was in Glendora,
Okay.
which is 50 miles away. And invited me to come out and join them for things, so I did. And we were working out, having a good time, and I noticed a commotion at the door, and in walked, oh my God, Elvis Presley. That's all is he doing here, right? And he wandered over to the mat, and he was watching us work out and everything. Next thing I know, he's out on the mats, want to work out with us, with me as his training partner. Now that's a chore for anybody. You better be unbelievably skilled to get out and join a class of black belts doing material that you're not familiar with.
Right.
But he did. So I helped him. I knew, obviously I knew he didn't know the stuff. So I helped him, I worked out, and it worked out fine.
Good.
So afterwards, Ed Parker showed up, and he and Elvis were standing there, and Ed Parker called me over and said, I want you to do your wowie technique for for Elvis. There was a technique I used to do. It was 13 different strikes done in sequence that I could do in 2 seconds. Takes me 2 minutes now, but and then in those days I could do it in 2 seconds.
Right.
I can do it for you right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
So back
Two-
then,
2
2
seconds.
seconds. Wow.
Yeah. And every time I used to do that, people would go, wow. So they named it that,
Wowie.
the Wowie technique. And I later learned that the primary reason why Elvis wanted to hire me as his personal bodyguard was that technique.
Wow.
They did.
The question I have is you weren't a fan, right? So you weren't going up and down the road, waiting for the next Elvis song to come on. You weren't really a fan.
No.
But you became a fan.
Yeah.
Right?
The first time I saw him perform live. Elvis live was like a finished record. A finished record is managed, okay? They tweak it, fix all the imperfections, and end up with the final product. Elvis was the final product in person. He was amazing. I mean, I don't know how to transmit that.
Okay.
An incredible performer. It's just awesome, really.
When we've spoken to different people that either worked for Elvis or knew Elvis or whatever, they talked about this energy that he had. And so many people have said that you could be sitting with your back to the door and 100 people could come in that door and it wouldn't even faze you. But when Elvis walked through that door, something happened. There was just something special about him.
Yeah.
I need to hear your opinion on what was that like and how did it feel? What do you think it was?
Charisma on steroids.
Okay.
Plus, he was an incredibly good-looking man.
That helps.
Oh yeah, it helps a whole lot. Especially females.
Right.
I mean, females, get a look at him and faint.
Right. On tour, you worked with him a couple times. You got a call to maybe go on a couple tours part-time at first,
Yeah.
right? So what was the first time that you ever saw him? Do you remember the performance? Do you remember where it was?
Yeah, I think I do. If it wasn't the first one, it was pretty close. It was Long Beach.
Long Beach. 72 probably?
Yeah, right around there. Because I remember I took my wife. I took my wife and my daughters, I think it was.
That would have been in, I can keep the dates pretty straight in my mind. That would have been probably November of 72.
Somewhere around it. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when it was, but that was the first performance we actually went to.
Can you tell me a little bit about the best you can remember about that performance, like where you were, where were you positioned, and what was that like with the flash cubes and the?
We were right in front of the stage. We had great seats, and it was electric.
So at that point in time, you're not doing the bodyguard work yet, right? You were just there. You were there as a spectator for that show.
Yeah, as a guest.
Okay. Okay. So he just wanted you to come along to join.
Yeah,
and
come on
just see how you felt.
Yeah,
doing it.
Bring your family. So
after all these years, and I love these kind of questions. After all these years, do you ever put a concert on and listen to it?
No.
No.
I don't own an Elvis record.
Is that right?
I've only read that book once.
So why don't you own a? You were part of that. Why don't you own a record? Especially I would think that you would want to own a live one because you're saying I was probably at that. I was at that show.
No, I don't. For some reason, well, I don't own any records of anybody else either. For some reason, I don't do that.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't really have any objection to it.
Just not one of your interests, right?
No, I generally read.
Okay.
You know, my routine is when I'm done in the day with doing whatever my chores are, I kick back and, you know, have a glass of wine and read a book.
Fair enough.
I have 800 books in my Kindle.
Wow.
All 3 of my Kindles.
Wow. What's your favorite thing to
I read 2 or 3 books a week.
What's your favorite thing? That would take me a
Oh, I like
year.
science fiction. I like different writers. You know, I like mystery stuff, and you know, kind of a potpourri of different kinds of stuff.
So the question that I've been waiting to ask you, because this is the kind of stuff that excites us, because as we told you in the pre-interview, Michael and I travel all around the country, going to the very same buildings that you guys went to. And we like learning, you know, how Elvis, you know, how he came in through the back and got, you know, the kitchens, going through the hotels, down through the kitchens and going to the car and everything. Can you just share a little bit about just give me like a typical day on tour, how it's in the morning, the show's usually not until either the afternoon or the evening. So what was you had free time in the morning to kind of do what you wanted to do, but then just give me a typical day on tour.
That was basically it. I would, depending on where we were, you know, I would go out to a restaurant, you know, have lunch or something. I would investigate the venue, you know, because you know, we had to have a plan, you know, obviously for getting in and out.
Sure.
And there were certain things that we learned to do, and mostly because Red and Sonny had learned how to do them the hard way, you know, by experience. And basically, we just never quit moving. Just keep going.
Right. So you'd go out and do a little something maybe on your own, and then you'd come back and
Yeah.
check out the building and
Yeah,
everything.
sure.
And then you'd, report up to the room to get him down to the car?
Yeah, get ready and you know, get going.
Okay. And he usually was already dressed, ready to go when he left the hotel, usually.
Pardon?
Right. He was usually already dressed, ready to go when you all left the hotel, right?
Usually, sometimes he wasn't.
Did he demand perfection as a boss? When I'm talking about when he's on tour, did he demand perfection, or was he?
Almost beyond belief.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. He'd get a little squeal out of the sound thing, and he would fire them all.
He didn't like the feedback, did he?
Oh, he wouldn't tolerate it.
Wow.
You had one chance to fix it. Was deadly serious about every part of his show had to be perfect.
Right.
And he felt that way because he never wanted to subject his fans to anything less than an actual perfect performance.
That's what made him Elvis.
Yeah.
Did you see him much while you were on tour, or was he pretty much just kept? It was usually the car or the plane to the car to the hotel, and then you
No,
probably
I
didn't
saw
see
him most of the time.
Did you?
Oh yeah, most
Okay.
of the time.
What kind of mood was he generally in? A good mood while he was on tour? Because
Yeah.
he's doing something he enjoyed, right? So,
Yeah, it was all cool. We had it all, you know, set down. The routine was all, everybody knew what they were supposed to do, and it worked like a well-oiled machine.
What was your your number one responsibility? What was your job? Like, did you have a certain position at the stage? Did you stay backstage? What was your job?
Well, usually you see pictures of me on stage, you know, with Elvis, but everywhere he went, I was.
Okay.
You know, my job was protecting Elvis. That's it.
Right.
No matter where he was and what he was doing, didn't matter. So that's the way I took it, anyhow.
Was the touring, in your opinion, was the touring tough? I've talked to some of the guys that said it was a grind. It was not easy. It was tough to get through those tours. What do you say about that?
It was a chore. It was a lot harder work than people would think. You know, just get in the car and go somewhere. No, it's not like that. First, you have an advance crew out setting everything up. That was Sonny and the Colonel.
Okay.
And they would set up all the security, all the routes, you know, all of the venue, the hotel rooms, you know, what kind of transportation, you know, when, you know, how many, what. It's a lot of work, a lot of work. How do you get Elvis on stage? You know, how do you get him off stage? You know, how do you protect him from that? I mean, it's like, I write one story in there about the girl on the flying trapeze, and that was at the Omni Theater in Georgia. The stage was high. It was about 15 feet off the ground, and it was level with the balcony. Mm-hmm. But it was about this far away from the balcony, okay? So Elvis would go to each section of the stage where there were fans, and he would sing to them and have scarves out, and then over to them. And then, so he did it at every concert, he did that. So in this particular time, I went with him to the back of the stage. And it's like, if you can imagine a 15-foot drop off the edge of that, I brought him up to the edge of that, and I put my hand on his knee, so he knew not to go any further. He couldn't see because of the, you know, strobes. So he knew, don't step, because there's a 15-foot drop there, you know. Anyhow, he gets through with his business with the, you know, the folks on that end, and he turns to leave, and I start to get up to go with him, and I noticed something out of my eye. I turned, and here's this girl flying through the air, diving over the balcony, and I catch her. If her slamming into me and driving me into the stage is catching her, then that's what I did. I caught her. And then she slipped away from me, and she's falling off the stage, and I got her by one hand, you know. Luckily, security saw, and they came by, you know, to help get her down. And I said, "Why the hell did you do that? What's wrong with you?" You know, she said, "Well, I want a scarf." So I went and got her a scarf and gave it to her.
Do you consider that you had a close relationship with Elvis, or was it more on the professional side?
No, a close relationship, yeah.
So you could go in, did you ever have, like, just sit down and have a private conversation with
All the
him
time.
on tour? What did he usually like to, I'm very interested in knowing, like, his mind. When he would talk to you private, man to man, he's probably not talking about music. What did he like talking to you most about?
Girls?
Girls.
Yeah. Whatever was on his mind or on my mind.
Right.
You know, we would talk about everything.
Because I've heard he liked to talk to people, that he wanted to find out about them, and he wanted the person to ask about things with regards to him as well.
You know, I'll give you an idea. I tell this story in my act. We were sitting around, this is the last half of my act that I give every day. We're sitting in his bedroom, actually sitting on his bed. We're just talking away, talking about this, that, and the other thing, whatever. And I said, "Hey, Elvis, you got any idea of how many vehicles you have bought and given away in the last couple of years?" And he said, "Nah, and I don't care either." He said, "Hang on, I want to show you something." He goes over to his office, he comes back, and he hands me a check made out to him in the amount of $100,000. 1974, $100,000. That's $3.5 million today, by the way. one of a series of checks, one of many before and many to come. And he said, you know, Dave, I'm not stupid. I know full well I couldn't buy the kind of goodwill and PR that I get whenever I buy somebody a car. He says, secondly, it seems like every time I do something nice like that for folks, you know, buy them a car, it comes back to me like 10 times over, or 100 times, 1,000,000 times over. You know, it's like that check you've got in your hand. He said, and lastly, it makes me feel good to make people happy. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Elvis Presley, the person.
It's funny you should say that, because that was going to be my next question. What made him the happiest? I think you just answered it.
There you are.
So that's good. What do you think worried him the most?
What?
What do you think worried him the most? Is
Doing a bad performance.
that right?
Yeah.
I've heard from a couple of people, I believe when we spoke with Dick Grobe, he told us that the first question that he would ask when he got in the car after a show was, how was the sound in that building?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that question asked.
Yes.
That was important.
Yeah, he was very, again, he was very, very particular about everything being perfect at a show.
That makes me like the guy even more. I mean, I already knew that, but when you confirm it, you know, like that, it just makes you like the guy even more, because it says that he did care about us. I want to ask you, like when it came time to, you got to get to the airport or you got to get to wherever, I've seen a lot of times he'll stop and just start signing autographs. He put the fans first, right? In the sense that if it meant that he was going to be late somewhere, he was still going to take the time with the fans. You saw that.
He said, drive me crazy with that. I said, come on, Elvis, we're going to be late. And he said, relax, Dave. Ain't nothing going to happen till I get there.
I love, that's the best part of the interview right there. I like that. Was there competition between the guy, maybe not with you, but did you see like a competition with the guys all wanting to be like the #1 guy with him, or did everybody just kind of do their job?
We're quite happy to have Joe do all that, and he did an excellent job of doing it.
I've been told by a lot of people that Elvis was very intelligent. Did you get that when you spoke with him? It just seemed like he read a lot. He was very well versed in a lot of subjects.
He was curious.
Curious.
I wanted to know about this, that, and the other thing, especially about spiritual stuff. He was quite interested in that, quite serious about, you know, why me, and you know, what happens, you know, after we die, and things like that.
For you, after all these years, does it feel like this part of your life happened just yesterday, or does it feel like 1,000,000 years ago?
Some like yesterday, and some not so much. I just had an occasion to record most of the stuff in my book that I wrote 6 years ago, just 6 years ago. And in the course of doing that, it dawned on me that there was quite a few things in that book that if I were writing it today, I would write it differently. You know, I would say it in a different way, because we evolve. You know, we're not the same person today that we were 10 years ago, like that, mentally, if nothing else.
I think that's what we were trying to point out earlier in the interview when we talked about, you know, the 35-year-old Dave Hebler that was part of that book is going to view this book a lot differently as the 85 or 86-year-old Dave Hebler. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm going to close with this, and if you can just go with me on this. When Michael and I do what we do, we go to these buildings. It's buildings all across the country that Elvis performed in. And the question that we get asked all the time, we never worked for Elvis. I didn't know Elvis. But the question that we get asked all the time, do we still feel the energy? Do we still feel some kind of a presence when we're in that building, if we're standing where he stood, but maybe before he went on stage or something? And I said, it's happened several times where you just, and people ask me, why do you think that is? And I said, in my opinion, I don't think that somebody can have that much charisma and that much energy leave planet Earth and not leave some of it behind. That's just my opinion. I feel that way. I feel that there's no way that he took everything with him. So I think some of it still exists. That same energy that we feel when we go out on the road and go to these buildings, I feel it here because there's so many good memories that happened in this building. Yeah. And with that energy kind of being here, I was wanting to know if you know what the last line in this book is.
What the what?
What the last line in this book is. Do you know what the last line says in that book?
No.
If I turn to that, what are the last 3 words that you read in there?
I'm still here.
This has been a pleasure.
Well, you wore me out worse than anybody ever
Well,
questioned me before.
That was my job, but I did that, and I hope that you understand the reason. And what I wanted to do is ask you fair questions. I didn't want to ask you a biased question. I didn't want you to think I was attacking you, because that's that wasn't my goal.
Well, you don't have to worry about it, because if you were unfair, she'd kill you.